Welcome to Civilization 7's unexpectedly big October patch update, update 1.2.5, which didn't just give us brand new maps or the better UI. It also seems to have flipped the entire metagame on its head. So, let's now take a proper look with gameplay so you can actually see the changes in this surprisingly substantial patch update 1.2.5 for Civ 7, and the very fun value-extracting new leader that's arrived as part of the Right to Rule collection too. First up, we have the new map types and improved map generation. This topic has been already fairly well canvassed here on the channel, so I'll just quickly say we've got new map types, Pangaea and islands, continents and islands, and the maps are generated under a new map generation technique. It should make them both more random and a little bit more natural feeling. The new map types, continents and Pangaea and islands, respectively, do not have a balanced start, by the way, and Firaxis say that they'll be less predictable map shapes overall. In my limited experience, of course it's a new update, but in my limited experience on stream today, I noticed, it does look a bit different here. This map has a massive inland ocean, effectively, as well as some more interesting carve-outs around the edges, around the coastline, that kind of thing. The second big change, and one that we focused in particularly onto during my last video, are the UI, or user experience changes. Here you can see them on your screen. I'll show you a collection of different clips. In essence, the text has become more readable, and by and large, it's now much easier to tell what yield you'll actually be getting. This is true for growth events when you gain a new population or place down a specialist, as well as overall when you're placing down buildings here. It's generally easier to read, and it works a little bit better with warehouse impacts too. The green and red up or down arrows are very helpful. I find I still kind of need to click on the improvement and actually sort of look at the map, look at the city, and almost like select it and mouse over it before I can really get a sense for what's changing though. So I think there are still some changes to be made on the city UI itself. However, I can't deny that overall readability has absolutely improved here, and you can probably get a sense for that off the clips here as well. While we're on the topic of the UI, there were all of those changes to the settlement management. By far and away, the biggest changes and the ones that they teased in the previous update. But there were also more changes that I've observed so far, and you can see them in the patch notes too. It includes a revamped new pause menu, generally much better designed, in a similar way that the leader load screens were redesigned in a patch maybe a couple of months ago. Alignment and spacing was also changed on the age progression, the government menus. Civilopedia saw a few little changes, and there were some controller-specific minor changes as well. The UI has also become a little bit more stylized. I noticed it, for example, around the city-states and their screens, as well as the celebration screen. Different ones now aren't just a very minimalist, if you will, a very simple UI screen, but they have some images or colors or what have you in the background. And speaking of those, and the city-states in particular, let's move on to the city-states, because they have changed and there's more of them. Two new types of independent powers have been introduced to Civilization 7. Diplomatic ones, very cool, as well as expansionist ones. The diplomatic ones, as you might imagine, tend to favor diplomacy. That usually means bonuses around influence or happiness. Some of these are very significant, providing it to buildings, providing you with a new option, a new diplomatic endeavor even, to gain more happiness. I think they also synergize very well with the new civilizations, and particularly the new leader, who we'll talk about toward the end of the video. The second new category of city-states, independent powers I should say, are the expansionists. By the way, with both of these categories, you'll sometimes find that old city-states have been sort of repurposed, recategorized, or there may be new ones overall. Regardless, the benefits are new, and here, for expansionist city-states, as you might imagine, we're looking at food. Food on resources, food on buildings, a whopping +4 in fact, or maybe settlers or settlement limits, the kind of things that can fuel your expansion, often in a peaceful way. The second big shift to city-states was actually, I would argue, part of a much broader change, and the most surprising lot of changes here in today's update. The developers seem to be doing a massive, meta-breaking, strategic balance pass across really every aspect of the game. We've got plenty of good examples to discuss here today. The first category of them is arguably within the city-states themselves, though. They say they found city-state bonuses were too powerful, and it encouraged suzeraining as many of them as you could. Absolutely it did. So they've made some balance adjustments. Now, to stack bonuses, you need to suzerain more of the same type of city-state. They've also cut down percentage bonuses, the free technologies and free civics, which were almost always picked, and most of the building yield bonuses have been toned down too, to try and make other gameplay decisions more important. This is true not just for the city-states we're talking about now, but across the board, as we'll talk about slightly later on in the video. Generally speaking, with the city-states, you'll notice that a lot of things that used to be percentage-based, like gain 5% gold for every city-state you're suzerain of, are now much more finite, much more limited. You won't be able to stack and snowball these things. They now provide, like, I don't know, +2 of the yield per trade route, or +3 gold for each economic city-state you're the suzerain of, instead of a percentage-based multiplier. So let's move on then and keep talking about this, what they're calling their strategic balance pass, that stretches into, as I argue, almost every area of the game, as well as touching the city-states. The next category are the attribute trees, the way that you level up your leader, right? Here again, stacking bonuses have been stripped back and completely pulled away. The developers say that stacking bonuses on the attribute tree were the biggest culprit behind ballooning yield numbers in the later ages of the game. However, we still like the gameplay of building out your leader's attributes over the course of a full campaign, and all direct percentage bonuses to yields have been removed from the attribute trees, replaced with more reasonable, but they hope still powerful, static bonuses. So, where you used to see +10% culture in cities with at least one wonder, you now see +5 culture per age in cities with a wonder. And the same is true, and the same kind of logic can be applied across the board here. Those rampant, often out of control, percentage-based, often repeatable multipliers as well on some of these nodes have been stripped back to just provide a straight-up core yield. +5 gold per age instead of +5% to your total gold, for example. Massively stripped back, and these will definitely change the kind of meta decisions that I'll be making moving forward. The next category in the balance pass that wasn't teased at all, rebalanced buildings. Might not sound like the most sexy or exciting change on the surface, but it has real potential to impact gameplay, and maybe it'll be favourable for tall players like me instead of wide players who look to build many settlements. Let's have a look. The headline change is that all buildings costs will now scale with the number of other buildings in that settlement, and across cities in your empire. So, the cost to produce and purchase a building increases by 5% for each non-warehouse building in the settlement. And the cost to produce and purchase a building increases by 10% for each city other than your capital within your empire. Just overall, how many cities do you have? For every extra one you have above your capital, the cost of producing a building increases by 10%. And so that's what they call the building cost progression, right? Because it's how the cost progresses based on what else you have, like the number of other cities you have, or the number of other buildings you have within a settlement. But what about the actual price of the building itself, the core cost and its yields? Well, they've all changed too. The biggest changes are in the exploration and modern ages. Buildings now provide straight up more yield. Firaxis have also designated one building per age to focus primarily on influence, giving more opportunities to produce influence output than we used to have before. Looking into the specifics here in the patch notes, in the Antiquity Age, Tier 1 buildings, the early ones like libraries and gardens, have a base production cost of 90 and will always give 3 base yield. Tier 2 buildings like the Arena or the Blacksmith have double the base cost at 180 and they'll produce 4 of their yield. In terms of influence, the Villa is the influence building, and it gives you some happiness too. And Civ Unique buildings now have a base cost of 135 and will give 3 base yield, with perhaps 1 or 2 exceptions here or there. And that same formula, that same format of having 2 tiers, of roughly doubling their cost, between tiers I should say, is actually true throughout most ages. Generally speaking, that's the format. There are a lot of moving parts and complications going on here. Another thing that's changing is unit maintenance. Again, as part of a broader pass to try and rebalance the overall metagame, to have gold be a little bit less abundant and therefore not just the go-to buy everything, build everything, right? So when it comes to unit maintenance, the way that it works now, generally speaking, is units will cost quite a bit of gold per turn as you move through the game, starting at just kind of like 1 or 2 or 3 in the Antiquity Age, and moving up to about 12 or 15 gold per turn for some of the later aircraft units in the Modern Age. The maintenance costs for units also increases by 1 gold per age per tier. So if your unit is a tier 2 unit, then it will increase by 2. And if that's happening in a higher age, like Exploration or Modern, then you're going to be paying even more. Maintenance costs increase by 3 gold per tier of the unit in the Modern Age. Your smaller settlements, towns, change a little bit here as well. Their base production and therefore gold has been removed. In fact, in terms of city halls and towns no longer have a base production yield. However, when you convert it into a city, you'll get the 3 production per age. As well as rebalancing a few of the social policies, though they noted in the patch notes that actually there are some that need a significant change or full redesign. So they're going to come back and make some changes in future. For the minute, they just sort of tinkered around the edges with a couple like drama and poetry castes in the Antiquity Age, chivalry in the Exploration Age. A few changes around the edges. More change, and more significant change, sadly, happened to my favourite resource in the game, gold, and a few other resources. These on-map bonuses weren't spared in this patch either. Some of life's greatest treasures were hit here: gold, silver, wine, as well as hardwood, jade, and furs. Gold and silver are the big ones, particularly gold. Gold used to provide a 20% bonus towards purchasing. So you'd get a reduction in the cost of buying stuff in your cities, right? Silver had the same effect, by the way, the 20% bonus, but it was towards the purchasing and upgrading of units. So if you had gold and silver, it was cheap buildings and cities and cheap upgrading of units. It's actually quite significant, this change, because if you had a few of them, you could do some really crazy stuff, right? Truly crazy stuff. It's been totally dialed back now. Gold provides +1 gold and happiness in all settlements. And the silver resource provides gold and food. Hilariously, yes, you can eat your silver in all settlements. Maybe a nod to cutlery and silverware. I don't know. Resources done, let's talk about victory. That's right. I told you it really has changed the entire metagame. The victory conditions have changed. Let's go through them one by one. Firstly, the cultural victory sees 2 changes. Explorers can't move anywhere near as much as they used to be able to. Used to be able to move 3, now they can only move 2. That will probably require you to build more of them or make it a little bit more difficult to rush out. They also reduced the overall number of artifacts, those things that they're looking for, available in the Modern Age on the larger map's size, so huge and large. Firaxis also increased the number of overbuild sites for all map types to better pace the cultural victory. Military action sees no direct change, so let's move on to our next category, economic victory. Here it's fairly straightforward. Basically just a note, actually. Because the costs of things like railway stations and factories, for example, have been reduced as part of their overall balance pass on buildings, then they say this should speed up the economic victory a little bit, make it slightly more competitive. We'll see how that one actually plays out. Finally, and most interestingly, the science victory. And arguably the overall science tree in the Modern Age has changed. Technologies from radio to flight, rocketry to nuclear fission, as well as mass production, armor, mobilization. All of these technologies have received a discount, actually, of roughly 10%, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. You might think that'll make the scientific victory easy, because you'll be able to move through the tech tree easier. However, in the patch notes, Firaxis makes specific point of mentioning they've made this change actually because all of their other changes slowed down science too much. By removing the stacking percentage bonuses or the free technology bonuses, they actually made it much harder to do this. So what they're trying to do is strike a balance to keep it would seem, roughly on par. Really gonna need to test this one out because it's they're changing a lot of different moving parts here, and I think it's gonna require more testing. If you're playing multiplayer, you'll be pleased to know that advanced options have now been added to multiplayer, and if you're not, you're probably going to be interested in the AI, so let's talk about how the AI has changed. Relatively few changes this time around, a couple of fairly important ones though, like, for example, the AI will no longer pick the first available pantheon when they unlock mysticism. Literally just the first one right there was what they took. See a thing, grab a thing, take a thing, right? Now they won't do that. Now they'll pick the one that is most beneficial to them. It's getting smarter, and it's coming for your job. The AI will now also add influence to the befriend independent person action. It used to fail to do that, now it will. It used to fail when you took the lead. So if you added some influence, it just wouldn't try and beat you. Now it will. And walls from previous ages are now properly removed when AI leaders overbuild new walls on a tile during the later ages. Big changes and small changes. For me, the fact that they'll actually get their pantheon right is probably the most significant one. Alrighty folks, let's talk leaders and civilizations. As far as the free update goes, mostly free of course, there's a little bit of DLC involved when Napoleon is factored in, but Napoleon was the big leader to change, both versions. The Emperor version now has all basic sanctions automatically unlocked to him, as well as a 50% extra boost to his influence towards initiating said sanctions. So Napoleon Emperor, your sanction king. A bit of bonus culture and gold per age for each leader you have said sanction on, except for their denouncement, and a little bit of extra combat strength for land units for every sanction you have active. Sanction King, though his unique sanction perhaps not so useful anymore. Looking at the second type of Napoleon, the revolutionary type, who used to give +1 movement for all land units, and defeating an enemy unit would give you 50% of its culture, its combat strength as culture, I should say. The new Napoleon benefit is +1 movement for all land units, so that stays the same. You now get +100% of the unit's combat strength as culture, so that's been doubled. And, as a little extra, the first time each age that a war is declared on you, you gain an army commander in your capital, packed with 1 infantry unit, 1 cavalry unit, 1 ranged, and 1 siege unit. That's cool. That's French. I like that a lot. Very flavorful, very fun. And one base game Civ received some changes as well. The Abbasids were, they say, punching way above their weight across many areas. The limiting factor of having 8 urban population required wasn't enough of a gate to the full force of their abilities. So they've been nerfed a little here, +1 gold in science for each resource assigned to cities with 5 specialists, whereas that used to be +3 of gold and science for each resource applied with 8 urban population. And similar changes as well, sort of a bit of a stripping back of their bonus science and a lot of stripping back from their extra production towards constructing buildings. Used to be 50%, now just 20%. And now onto the paid side, the content, the expansion, the DLC called Right to Rule. There was one leader, right? One new leader, Lakshmibai. An influence-based leader, and a patch that added actually a little bit more influence and maybe helped to better balance and better distribute resources. We see a very fun, value-laden leader. Here you get basically 3 benefits. You can incorporate cities very cheaply once you've won them over. And when you fight an enemy with your units, you'll earn more influence. So you'll spend less influence and earn more, is the general premise here. It's so strong though, because when you take over the city-state, right, when you finally suzerain them and then incorporate them, turning them into your own city, you get all of their units for free. So, if they have, let's say, 5 units, totally doable, totally achievable, then you get 5 free units, as well as getting the city, or settlement, town, if you will, that you've just incorporated. And it's at half the price it would normally cost, as far as influence goes. I cannot stress enough how much fun it's been to play. Is it the best? Is it like the... Well, you know, maybe not. I mean, city-states have been noticeably nerfed in this update across the board, right? It's no longer all that desirable to just pick up every single one of them, for example. However, their benefits are still very good. And crucially, getting massive free armies is very good. So I'd encourage you, if you have the Right to Rule DLC, to have a little play around in an influence-heavy build with Lakshmibai. I think you'll very much enjoy it. There are also, of course, 2 new civilizations here as part of this DLC. We've talked about them many times before. Silla, in the ancient era, is a very resource-focused, a very money-focused civilization. They have a nice ranged unit, but more importantly, they get extra culture from resources, and they have a unique merchant, which will ultimately give you a little bit of extra money if you have a good relationship with the person you're trading with. And then in the 3rd age, the final age, modern, we have a more expansionist-focused Silla civilization. This one receives increased influence towards supporting a diplomatic action, could be very useful in the fight, as well as a unique commander movement with more movement, with more movement, and they can raise more districts as well. So they move more, they burn more stuff down, and they have a unique cavalry to go with it. Goodness me, what an update. Don't forget that the update does take a bit of time to roll out to different platforms. I'm of course playing on PC, and it has already rolled out on Steam. Couple of other points to note: it will almost certainly have broken your mods if you're playing with mods. They may take a little while, and you may also need to play a new save, or at least move through to the next age in your current save to see all of these changes. I think they've done a pretty good job, actually. I like the new maps, they're great. Leader changes, totally fine, seem pretty good. The unexpected strategic balance pass is what's really got me, because the whole meta has been shaken up, thrown upside down. Some of them will be more impactful than others, I don't doubt, but I feel, just given how wide-reaching they are, particularly the changes to the scaling bonuses. I'm thinking about my favorite gold resource, but there are plenty of others. This should have a big impact, not just on how the overall game plays, but also everything that's connected to that. Which leader is good? Maybe I'm not just spamming every single building out now in every single city. Maybe I'm making meaningful decisions, helping to kind of maybe curtail one of the persistent criticisms of Civ 7. That it's just, you just build everything, who cares, every city's the same. Maybe now, decisions will matter much more. Whew. It's a whomper of an update, and this has been a whomper of a video. So sorry for wasting more of your time than usual, but there's a lot to discuss. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.